Assalamu alaikum, hi everyone. So today we are going to bind the front end with the back end. So when someone fills in the data and select their interest, whether they're going or not going or interested, when they submit this button or they hit submit anywhere in the field, it should do some validation, and if the data is valid, then submit it to the backend. So let's get started. Last time we stopped here, so let's scroll for the form. This is our form here, and we need it on submit to, for example, to handle submit. It will run a function called handle submit, and if we look at our fields, I will comment all the required fields first so that we see the validation. I will add the following: errors dot first name, then display a paragraph with class name text red 500, and remember that we have to accept the errors, and I will do the same for the last name and etc. So now I have the errors here. Okay, that's good. Next we are going to do is to bind the input fields. So to do that, I'm going to create a handle change. So for example, we have all of them are going to have an ID, right? First name, email, mobile, company, and notes. And below that I will add on change it will accept handle change, or it will return a callback. This handle change will be like this. So remember, for the on submit we had a function called handle submit, and then for the on change we had handle change, and this by default it takes an event, and this event, or let's say an E for simplicity, this event will update the values that we have for the input fields, and to do that it's going to be like this. So basically here we are going to create values, setter and getter, set values and values, and it will be changed whatever value that we pass to it through the handle change. And first we have to do this for the values. And its initial state, it's going to be now. If we go back to our application, refresh, you can see in the state here we have this one. It has all the fields. Going is true. I will rename this create your account. It will be like this, submit. Now let's see if we can generate some errors here. To do that we need to make a use of the handle submit, and just to be safe we will be passing the event to the handle submit, and the event will prevent default, so it doesn't submit the form. And we will be utilizing inertia.post. Here we need to pass a URL, so it's like campaigns, what we have done in the web PHP. So we need another one for the post, so it's the same path but for post, and it will go to store. Now you can modify it to something else, but this is what I will be using. So let's save this one also, and here let's pass this into the following way. So we can add a variable. Here we need the campaign.data.uuid, and when we post we need the values, right? So here we pass the values. The third parameter inside post is an object that has several options, like when the transaction starts or when it finishes, or if there is an error, or etc. So I will leave it as it is right now, or we can just leave it empty for now. And on the controller, on the campaign controller, let's remove everything that we are not using here. In a production solution you want to keep the comments, I always prefer that, but for our purpose here, for this tutorial, I will just remove the comments here just to make things clearer for us. Now this store, it passes two things. It will contain the request, but also it will contain the campaign. Here the first thing that we are going to do is to validate. Now we will validate the request, and we have an array of properties to validate. I have, for example, first name. It has to be required and maximum of, let's say, 255. And it has to be like this way. So let's say that I have these properties to be validated. Now let's see what we have done in our front end, and the watcher is working. Okay, so when we run the handle submit, it posts to this route. So let's see what we are receiving here. Refresh. I will just submit an empty, and here it says that post campaign undefined is not, so it looks like I didn't pass the UUID. So it's in the resource, campaign resource. No, I didn't pass the UUID. So I will pass two things here, the ID and the UUID. We can leave out the ID, but I will just leave it commented for documentary purpose. Refresh. So now let's submit. Now the UID is coming, as you can see, but it's not picking that the route is there. So let's see what is the route. So I have campaigns, and this looks correct. So yeah, so I have a typo. IGN. Okay, save, refresh, submit. Now as you can see, the first name, it's required, family name, it's the last name, email, mobile, company, etc. So I trust now that the validation is working. Let's change the font size for the errors. Now when someone submits the form it should disable the input fields and the submit button. And to do that, I will convert all the classes into something that we can use in the app CSS. So I will say that this is a form input. For example, I will give it a class of form input, or let's say all of the inputs. It will have form dash input, and in this app CSS resources, I'll just add it form dash input, and I will apply the same rules. Now if I just refresh, nothing should change. It still works as expected. But what I will do is when a form input is disabled, I need to change the background. So I will apply. One thing I missed here is the focus. I shouldn't put the focus like this. So what I will be doing is on form input focus, I will grab all the focus elements, apply, the same will go for the disabled. Now what we need is to get this disabled working, so let's work on that. I will go to the home and I will add a new constant called loading and set loading, use state, initial value is false. Now when you get to the input fields, all the inputs should have a disabled property that it's when it's loading, then it's disabled. So how we can now switch the value of the loading, so when we press on the submit, we set loading to true. We can do that in multiple ways. One of them is here, and this is what I prefer. On start, but it's inside an action, inside an option. So on start, set loading, I'll say it's true, and on finish. Now whether it's an error or success, I just need the loading to be gone. So set loading to false. So let's see what we have achieved so far. Now when we press, as you can see, it went gray for a small brief time. And to increase that, so we can see it better, I will go to the controller and I will put sleep for 3 seconds, refresh. So as you can see, this is better now. The same I will apply for the submit. I will create a new button for the submit. So it's a button btn primary. On this page I have only one single field, but it's better to separate the colors. Now I forgot one thing here. I should remove the focus from inside the apply, because we have assigned it to the property itself. So I will save this one. I will come again to the submit. I will save it as well. Let's refresh. It's working. However, I forgot to add the disabled. So disabled when loading is true. Now I believe it's working, but because I didn't give the disabled option a background color, so it will be like this. So let's refresh. So that's working. I will fix one thing here, one small thing on the app.js. It's this progress bar. I need to give it a color other than the blue, which is just red, regular red. So at least we can see it. It's not visible to me. Now it's like it's easier to see. Now you remember I told you that this is one way of doing the loading. The other one would be similar to this one, but instead of having it on the inertia post, we can do like this when it can be outside the function of submit. It can be on the root, so it's like inertia dot on and on start. Then you run your function and like this. So you say that set loading equal to true, and that will work. And the same you do for when finish also. But I'd rather to keep it simple like this. Now I have a small change on the UI, which is adding an icon to give us an indication that something is going. Even we have the disabled gray background, we need like an icon for when loading. So I will say when loading, give me an icon of, I think, refresh. I'll give it this classes, and when it's not loading, let's give it submit, sorry, plain icon, paper airplane icon. So if you refresh this one, you can see, yeah, I would like to have it rotated. So rotate by 90 degree, refresh. So yeah, we have now the submit. However, it's not aligned in the center, so we can do the following. We can make this, I'm not sure we made the button, is it flex or inline flex? It's flex, so this will work. We can do this here also. Item center. Now if we refresh, now it's aligned, and when we click, I noticed something here wrong, which is this has to be disabled. And one last thing, we need the refresh icon to be animated, so it's animate spin, animate spin, refresh. Let's move to capturing the data. In my controller we have validated, let's remove the sleep, or at least comment it. So for creating the contact, usually we see it like the following in the tutorials. We see it like this. So contact, so this method of creating a new object and assigning its value and then save, it's the one that you see usually on the tutorials and on the documentation. However, sometimes your business could require a different approach. So let's first fix this string. So we are going to use the str to create the UUID for us for the contact. But instead of creating a new contact, our logic dictates something different. So when someone registers for an event and then they register for another event, they shouldn't be considered as two separate contacts. It should be the same contact. And to do that, instead of creating a new object here, so instead of having a new contact, we will be using contact first or new. So if it doesn't find a contact, it will create a new object. But if it does find a contact, it will update the contact. The criteria for our contact is the email. So it will look for a contact that has an email in the contacts table, and if it finds it, it will grab its object and then update the content here, or it will create for us a new contact with this email and we add the same fields here. Next, on the campaign, we are going to find the contacts. Remember, we already added them to the data, to the model, and we can say sync without detaching. So this contact is added to this campaign and we don't remove any other contacts assigned to this campaign. And the way we pass this is like the following. So we pass an array that has the ID of the contact. So we already created the contact in the earlier step, so we have the ID. Then for the value, and remember the ID here is the key, and for the value we pass the additional pivot fields, which are the notes. So we have the request notes. Now this should work, but let's first return redirect route. So here we are redirecting to the same page, the show page, but we need to add some success message. So however, this should work, but I always prefer to keep it more professional and keep this code inside a transaction. And the way we do transaction is by begin transaction, then we say try and catch. You paste everything we just copied, and then at the end db commit, so it will commit the data. And if something goes wrong, you do the following: you make a rollback, and you can say return, for example, back with the error. So you can see that there is error and it's something went wrong. Now if you want to see the details of the error, but make sure this will show also in production if you do this, but if you need the exact error you can do this. This will work also. Now let's see on the home, do we have the flash messages? No, we have only errors. So we can have the flash, and I'm not sure if we have the flash on the inertia. So no, we don't have that. So we can pass it here on this inertia middleware. So we can say flash on the shared data. This is the shared data. So this is our flash errors. This is how it's done. It's basically grabbing error, success, info, and warning from the session, and we assign it to this flash object that we can see here. It's a property that we can see here. So I will put it here. So I simply put this paragraph with this styling. Now let's check if we get some errors, or let's first make a error. Let's force an error. So let's say that there is no UUIDs field, so it should. So as you can see that now it picked the error. However, I missed this email because we used it in this object creation, so we have to add it to the fillable and the contact. So the contact here, we need to add protected. Save, fresh. So now as you can see, this error, it shows that there is no UUIDs field, and if we go and fix that one now submit again, now it says unknown column interested in the field list. So apparently I made a typo. So it says this column doesn't exist. So let's see in the migration campaign contact. Yeah, I made a typo. I will paste this, save, I will run. So I just ran the migrations again, and I will refresh the data. I copy the UID, a new one, paste. So now we have another one. Let's submit. Now apparently I made another typo here. As you can see, the payload, it picked the wrong wording. This one. So just refresh and run it again. So apparently it did take the request. Let's check. So let's refresh our data. As you can see, now we have our new contact here, this one. I'm going to grab a success message from Tailwind UI. This one is good, so I will copy. And in the shared, I will create a new file. I will call it success modal.jsx. So if I just copy this flash error here, I will add, if I have flash success, then I need success modal. It has a message equal to flash. Let's refresh again. And here I will change the phone number into 9s. As you can see, now I have the modal. It says everything is good, closed. Now we have this is done. And the reason I changed the mobile number is that when we go to the database and if we refresh, as you can see, the mobile number changed. So it picked the same contact and it updated its details. Now before we close this, there is one thing that is not working, and it's this tabs. So let's say that I have selected, I will fix this styling, but let's say that I selected the not going and I filled the data, and if I hit submit, what will happen? If I go to the database again, let's refresh, and it's the campaign here. Let's refresh. Sorry, it's the campaign contact. Let's refresh this one. You will see that it is still going. Let's just make sure that we are loading it correctly. So we can see it is still going even though we selected not going. And why is that? Because it's true that we are, let's pick components. It's true that we selected the not going, as you can see here in the state, but it did not reflect on the values state we have here. So the not going is not selected, it is still selected the going. And to change that, we have to do the following. Let's go to our home and we will make use of use effect. So there is use effect. Not sure why it didn't pick it the first time. However, this is what I need, is that we are watching the selection. So if the selection of the going, not going, if it changes, we need to update these three. So to do that, we are going to say if selection, basically if it has a value, then set the values into, so let's grab the original and update the following. So going will be selection dot name if it's going, then true, else it's false. So now if we refresh and I will select, sorry, I missed something here. I don't have this. Okay, sorry. Let's refresh. If I select interested, now I selected interested, and you can see that we have it here, the interested one, because it's yellow. And on the values, we can see that all of them are false. I'm sure I made a typo also in the tabs. So this is going to be interested. And here not going, all good, all good. Refresh. So I will select interested, And here we can see that the interested is true, and if I select the not going, now not going is true. Now everything went smooth. Let's check our contact. Let's refresh. As you can see that now it's not going. One last thing, which is this hover. On hover, we have something wrong here on the tabs. This should be moved from here to here, because it's a conditional. Now let's refresh. As you can see, now it's working. So Alhamdulillah, this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you learned something useful from it, and see you inshallah in the next one.